When I was 19, I was working 3 part-time jobs and going to school full time and playing competitive soccer. I had a 4.0 GPA and I had an amazing social life, and everything was incredible and working until it wasn't. And in the same day, I got fired from one job, quit the second, and took stress leave from the third. Now, when you're 19 years old and you take stress leave, what happens is your manager laughs at you. Now, I figured stuff out, ended up quitting school, moving cities, and a handful of years later, I'm working a full time job, going to school full time, playing competitive soccer, and in a pretty dysfunctional relationship. My partner at the time suffered from um, manic depression and bipolar disorder, and he was on and off his meds. And so our pattern was he would pull me down to the point of complete loss and bewilderment, and then he would love me. So I was at the point of I got to finish school. I got to get something under my belt. And being a high achiever all my life, I was a little bit aghast that by the time I was 24, I still hadn't finished anything in college or post secondary. So I pushed through. I kept working. I finished my diploma, and then I ended my relationship, sold everything I owned, and went backpacking to South America for a year on my own. Fast forward a decade later, and I am running an international e-commerce company. I am a single mom living in one of the most expensive cities in the world. And I was suffering from pretty severe depression and burnout. I was probably riding burnout for a good year and a half. My psychologist and my doctor had urged me month after month after month to go on meds, and being holistically minded, I really refused. I just couldn't do it. And I tried everything. I exercised, I meditated, I ate well, I got outside, I socialized, but at the core of it all, regardless of my holistically healthy ways, I was suffering because I was not in a job or career that was in alignment with my soul. So, no amount of taking care of my physical or mental being through these different modalities helped when the core essence of who I was suffering so badly. I ended up quitting the corporate world with no plan in hand, leaving a 6-figure job with cushy benefits. And everyone around me really projected their fears, because to live in such an expensive city as Vancouver as a single mom with no income is not for the faint of heart. Thankfully, I was well supported by some dear friends, 2 of my ex-partners, who really helped kickstart my healing journey. And I spent a year dedicated to learning to love myself, to building self-compassion. Highly recommend, if you're struggling with low self-esteem like I was at that time, to explore Kristen Neff's work on compassion. When I began her work, there's a workbook that she does on self-compassion, and there's an exercise you can do that is a self-analysis that measures your self-compassion. And I scored the absolute lowest on the entire exercise. Now, I spent a couple of months working through that workbook, and as well as doing some purpose work. I recall diving into some of Danielle Laporte's work and exploring a bunch of different healing modalities. So I ended up actually taking SSRIs for exactly 1 year, the lowest dose I possibly could, getting off as early as my doctor would allow, living in a very gray city. I worked with pranic energy healers and Reiki healers. I explored with plant medicine, acupuncture, reflexology. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, continued to work with my psychologist, and really dove deep into understanding the truth of who I was. All of the pains that had amassed over time since childhood that really brought me to these scenarios of choice points in my life that continued my pain journey because of my lack of awareness. So as I worked internally and did the shadow work and worked with my inner child and continued my healing journey, I eventually came out of that year with purpose. And now fast forward 4 years later, and I am loving and appreciating the work that I get to do now. I run my own business. My clients are some of the most inspiring people I've ever met. I'm continuing to develop my skills on a therapeutic level using internal family systems. And I couldn't be more grateful. Burnout was a gift, a lesson I had to learn 3 times, 19 years old, 24 years old, and again at 35, before I could finally understand why I'm here. So I share this because we experience struggles and patterns in our life for good reason. But it takes zooming out and non-attachment to be able to draw from that pain and that suffering lessons and awareness that will realign our minds with our soul. So my invitation for you is, if you're struggling with chronic stress or overwhelm or burnout or depression, begin the journey of knowing yourself and connecting with the truth of who you are and doing the work that your soul is calling on you to do, because you're here for a purpose and you're here to make an impact. And the life that awaits you when you are doing that is the most freeing, satisfying, liberating, peaceful, exciting life that you could imagine.